I was about to quit on New Year's, but then my boss did the unthinkable. New Year's Eve was always a time for fresh starts, new resolutions, and an opportunity to leave the past behind. But for me, this particular New Year was about more than just resolutions. It was about making a huge change in my life. I was ready to quit my job and start fresh, maybe even find something that actually made me happy. But just when I was about to walk out the door for the last time, my boss did something that completely changed my plans and, honestly, my entire perspective on work. What he did was so unexpected, so out of left field, that I couldn't believe it was actually happening. And looking back, I wonder if it was fate, luck, or something else entirely. All I know is that in that moment, my whole life seemed to shift. And what happened after that day would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about myself and my career. I had been thinking about quitting my job for months. The signs had been clear for a while. Long hours, no appreciation, feeling stuck in the same routine with little to no room for growth. I had tried to stay motivated, tried to push through, but nothing was changing. Every day felt like I was just going through the motions, getting more and more frustrated with each passing week. It wasn't like I hated the job. In fact, I actually liked the work itself. But the company, the management, that's where things fell apart. My boss, Rick, was the kind of guy who'd throw around motivational speeches on Monday mornings. But when it came to actually showing any support or giving feedback, he was nowhere to be found. And as for the rest of the leadership team, they were too busy patting each other on the back to notice the employees were barely hanging on. By December, I had made up my mind. I was done. New Year's Day would mark the start of my freedom. I had no concrete plans yet, no new job lined up, no idea what I wanted to do next. But I knew I had to make the change. The thought of another year in that dead-end position made my skin crawl. The night before New Year's Eve, I made my resolution official. I would quit. I had been putting it off for too long, but this was it. No more wasting time on a job that wasn't going to help me grow or get me where I wanted to go. I wrote out my resignation letter, took a deep breath, and prepared myself to hand it in first thing the next morning. The nerves hit me hard, but I pushed through them. I had a plan, and I was going to stick to it. As I sat on my couch that evening, reflecting on everything that had led me to this point, I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. I was scared of what was to come, but I was also excited about the possibility of change. This was the moment. The new year wasn't just about fresh starts, it was about taking control of my own future. Little did I know, Rick had his own plans for the new year, and they involved me in a way I never expected. I woke up on New Year's Eve feeling both excited and nervous. I had made up my mind. I was going to quit my job today. After months of frustration, lack of appreciation, and feeling stuck, I was finally ready to walk away and start fresh in the new year. The resignation letter was ready, and all I had to do was hand it over to my boss, Rick. I couldn't wait to leave the stress behind and embrace something new. The office was quiet that morning, with most people taking time off. I was planning to catch up on some emails, then give Rick my resignation letter before heading out. But when I arrived, his door was closed, and something felt off. As the hours passed, I waited for Rick to come out of his office. When he finally did, he walked straight up to my desk with a serious look on his face. "Hey, my name? Can you come to my office for a minute?" he asked, his tone a little more serious than usual. I followed him, confused and a bit uneasy. As soon as we entered his office, he motioned for me to sit. His demeanor was different than usual, almost like he had something important to say. "We need to talk," he started before pausing. "The company's been going through some changes, and I want to offer you something big." My heart started racing. Was he going to fire me before I had a chance to quit? Or was this some kind of last-minute save? Rick continued, "I want to offer you a leadership role, more responsibility, more compensation. I think you're the person to help turn things around here." I was stunned. The words didn't register at first. This was the opposite of what I had expected. I had been ready to leave, but now I was being handed an opportunity I had never seen coming. I sat there, stunned, processing Rick's offer. It felt like the world had shifted beneath my feet. One moment, I was ready to walk out the door, free from the job that had drained me for months. And now, in the blink of an eye, I was being handed a chance to step up and lead. My mind was racing. How could I even think about leaving now? Rick was watching me carefully, waiting for a response. I could see the expectation in his eyes, but also a hint of uncertainty. He knew I'd been frustrated, and this offer wasn't just about keeping me around. It was about making me feel valued, like I had something to offer. He had clearly thought this through. "Take your time to think about it," he said, sensing my hesitation. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I really think you could make a difference here." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. My resignation letter was still in my bag, and I was just moments away from handing it in. Now I was sitting here, torn between two radically different paths. On one hand, this was a dream opportunity. The idea of more responsibility, more recognition, and a higher salary was incredibly tempting. I'd always wanted to move up, and this was the break I'd been waiting for. But on the other hand, I couldn't ignore the fact that my reasons for wanting to leave hadn't disappeared. The toxic work environment, the lack of appreciation, I had been ready to leave all of that behind, to finally escape the daily grind and start fresh somewhere else. As I sat there, the weight of it all started to sink in. I had to make a decision, and it wasn't going to be an easy one. Was I willing to give this place another chance? Or was this just a last-ditch effort to keep me from walking out the door? I needed a moment to think. "I need to go for a walk," I said, standing up and gathering my thoughts. Rick looked a bit surprised, but he nodded and told me to take all the time I needed. As I stepped outside into the brisk New Year's air, I tried to clear my mind. I needed to figure out what I really wanted. Was this just a fleeting opportunity, or was it a genuine chance for growth? Should I take it or stick with my original plan and move on? I wandered outside for a while, trying to make sense of everything. The cold air helped clear my head, but the questions kept swirling in my mind. Was I really ready to walk away from a good opportunity? Or was I just running away from the discomfort of change? I had been planning my escape for so long, fantasizing about the freedom that would come with leaving. But now that the option to stay and grow was right in front of me, I was paralyzed. On one hand, I hated the office politics, the long hours, and the lack of recognition. On the other, I knew that if I left, I'd be starting over completely. No safety net, no backup, no guarantees. I decided to talk to someone, the one person I trusted with everything, my best friend, Emily. We'd been through thick and thin together, and she always had a way of seeing things clearly when I couldn't. I called her and explained the situation. "I don't know what to do, Em," I said, my voice trembling with indecision. "I'm literally standing at the crossroads of my career right now. Part of me just wants to walk out, but the other part of me is thinking, this could be the chance I've been waiting for." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You know, it's easy to think that walking away is the only solution when you're fed up," Emily said thoughtfully. "But sometimes, staying and fighting for what you want is the real challenge. This could be your opportunity to prove to yourself that you can handle more, that you don't have to settle for being unhappy just because it's easy." Her words hit home. I had been running from discomfort for so long, trying to avoid the hard work of pushing through the challenges. Maybe it wasn't the right time to give up. Maybe this was my moment to rise above the mess I had been in and prove that I was capable of more. "All right, I think I've made up my mind," I said with more conviction than I had felt all day. "I'm going to take the opportunity, but this time, I'm doing it for me. Not for Rick, not for the company, just for me." Emily's voice lit up with approval. "I think that's the right call. Go in there, take the leadership role, and show them what you're made of. You got this." With a new sense of clarity, I walked back to the office, my mind finally made up. I wasn't going to quit. Instead, I was going to take control of the situation, seize the opportunity Rick had offered, and prove to myself that I could rise above the challenges that had been holding me back. As I walked back into the office, a sense of calm washed over me. The decision was made, and there was no turning back now. I knew that taking this opportunity wasn't just about advancing my career. It was about pushing past my fears, taking responsibility for my own success, and proving to myself that I could thrive in any environment. Rick was still in his office when I returned, and I could tell he was waiting for my answer. I walked in with a sense of purpose, holding my head a little higher than I had that morning. "Rick, I've thought it over," I began, my voice steady. "I'm going to take the role you offered. I'm ready for the challenge." Rick looked surprised, but pleased. "That's great news. I knew you'd come around. I've seen what you're capable of, and I think this will be a great fit for you." I smiled, but inside, I felt a rush of excitement. This wasn't just a job change. It was a turning point in my life. I was stepping up in ways I hadn't done before, and it felt empowering. We spent the next few hours going over the details of the new position, what it would entail, the responsibilities, and the team I would be working with. Rick made sure I understood everything and reassured me that he was there to support me. It felt like a fresh start, and I realized that this was what I had been missing: purpose, direction, and a sense of ownership in my work. The day passed quickly, and before I knew it, it was time to head home. As I walked out of the office that evening, I couldn't help but smile. I hadn't just decided to stay. I had taken control of my future. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came next with determination. The first few days in my new role were a whirlwind. Everything felt different: more responsibility, more pressure, but also more excitement. I was determined to prove myself and show Rick that he had made the right decision. The team I was now leading had always been in the background, but now I was tasked with getting them to work together and take on bigger projects. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly. I had meetings with each of my new team members to get a feel for their strengths and weaknesses, and I began making small changes to improve workflow. Rick seemed pleased with my progress and gave me more freedom to make decisions, which was both empowering and terrifying at the same time. But then, about a week into my new role, the first real challenge hit. A major client we'd been working with for months suddenly expressed dissatisfaction with the direction of the project. They were threatening to pull their business, and if that happened, it could have a massive impact on the company's bottom line. Rick, who had always been hands-off with clients, looked to me to handle the situation. I won't lie, I was terrified. I had dealt with some tough clients in the past, but this was different. The stakes were high, and the pressure was immense. My first instinct was to panic. I had so much to prove, and I didn't want to fail. But instead of letting fear control me, I took a step back and thought about how to approach the problem strategically. I spent the next couple of hours gathering data, reviewing the client's history with the company, and talking to the team to understand what had gone wrong. It became clear that there had been some communication breakdowns, and expectations hadn't been clearly set on both sides. This wasn't an unsolvable issue, but it required a lot of work to repair the relationship. I scheduled a meeting with the client and presented a solution that not only addressed their concerns, but also offered additional value, something that would show them we were willing to go above and beyond to make things right. I was nervous as I walked into that meeting, but as soon as I started talking, I could feel my confidence growing. I knew the company's strengths, and I knew I could handle this if I stayed focused. By the end of the meeting, the client was much calmer. They didn't commit to continuing the partnership right away, but they agreed to give us another chance and work with us to make things right. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was progress, and that felt like a huge win for me. When I got back to the office, Rick was waiting for an update. I told him about the meeting, and he seemed genuinely impressed. "You handled that well," he said, a rare smile on his face. "I knew I made the right choice putting you in charge." In that moment, I realized something important. This was my turning point. I hadn't just proved myself to Rick. I had proved something to myself. I could handle the pressure. I could lead. And I wasn't going to let the fear of failure stop me from achieving what I set out to do. As the weeks went on, I settled into my new role more and more. The initial shock of the transition had worn off, and I was starting to see the fruits of my labor. My team was beginning to gel, the workflow was improving, and I felt more confident in my decisions. But with success came its own set of challenges. One of the biggest hurdles was balancing the pressure of leading a team while still managing the constant stream of new responsibilities. There were days when I barely had time to eat lunch, and the stress started to build up. I had days when I felt like I was failing at everything, meeting deadlines, responding to emails, keeping up with personal relationships. It was a lot. The thrill of the challenge was still there, but I was beginning to realize that it wasn't all glamorous. One morning, after a particularly draining meeting with a client who wasn't happy with some of the changes we had made, I walked back to my office feeling exhausted. I closed the door behind me and sat down, rubbing my eyes. There was so much to do, and it felt like every time I solved one problem, 3 more would pop up. I wasn't used to feeling this overwhelmed. I thought about what I had been through in the past few months. When I had decided to stay at the company, I had no idea how tough things would get. But as I sat there, I reminded myself that this was exactly what I had wanted. The opportunity to prove myself, the chance to grow. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be worth it. That afternoon, I called a team meeting to regroup. We went over the issues we were facing, discussed what was working and what wasn't, and came up with a new plan to address the client's concerns. I was surprised at how quickly the team came together, offering suggestions, brainstorming solutions, and showing me that I wasn't alone in this. They were as invested in the company's success as I was. After the meeting, I walked out of the room feeling lighter. I realized I had been putting too much pressure on myself to solve everything on my own. I didn't have to carry the weight of the world. Leadership wasn't just about making decisions. It was about creating an environment where people felt supported and heard. I had to trust my team, and in return, they would help me achieve what we all wanted. That evening, I called Emily. She had been my sounding board through this entire process, and I needed someone to talk to. "So, how's the new role going?" she asked. I let out a deep breath. "It's harder than I expected. There are days when I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. But I'm learning a lot, and I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. I'm not alone in this anymore. I have my team, and I'm learning to trust them more." Emily was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You've got this. You've always had it in you. Just remember, you're not supposed to have all the answers. You don't need to do everything yourself. It's okay to ask for help." Her words hit home. I had been so focused on proving myself that I hadn't stopped to appreciate how far I'd come. I was still learning, still figuring things out. But I was on the right path, and most importantly, I was no longer alone. The next few weeks passed in a blur of deadlines, meetings, and growing responsibilities. The challenges I had faced initially didn't disappear, but I began to handle them with more confidence. My relationship with the team had grown stronger, and the atmosphere at the office had improved. There was still a long way to go, but I could feel the momentum building. My leadership was starting to take shape, and I was beginning to feel like I was truly making a difference. But just as things seemed to be getting better, a new unexpected challenge emerged. A competitor, a company I had admired from afar for years, launched a new product that quickly gained traction. It was everything we had been working toward, but they had done it better, faster, and with more resources. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Suddenly, I was questioning everything: our strategy, our products, and even my own ability to lead. Rick called me into his office the next day. "We need to talk about the new competitor," he said, his tone serious. "They're gaining market share fast. What's our plan?" The pressure was on. I knew the company couldn't afford to lose ground, but the competition was fierce. I felt a wave of doubt hit me, but I pushed it aside. This was my moment to prove not only to Rick, but to myself, that I could rise to the occasion. For the next few days, I threw myself into the problem. I met with the team, brainstormed new ideas, and re-examined our entire strategy. I wasn't going to back down. I knew we had something special, even if the new product was impressive. We had the creativity, the drive, and the potential to take on anyone. It was just a matter of rethinking our approach. One evening, as I was working late, it hit me. We had been focusing too much on what the competitor was doing, and not enough on what made us unique. I grabbed my notebook, wrote down my thoughts, and started sketching out a new plan that highlighted our strengths and took advantage of the untapped markets the competitor hadn't touched yet. The next morning, I presented the new plan to Rick and the team. It wasn't a radical overhaul, but it was a fresh approach, one that leveraged our team's creativity and innovation. Rick looked over the plan, then met my gaze. "This is good," he said. "I think we can make this work." Within a few weeks, we implemented the plan. The results weren't instant, but the progress was undeniable. Our clients started to take notice, and slowly but surely, we started to win back the ground we had lost. The competitor had set the bar high, but we weren't going to let them define our success. We carved out our own space, and by the end of the quarter, our sales numbers had started to rise again. For the first time since I took on the role, I felt a deep sense of pride. The company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. We were adapting, learning, and growing, and I had played a major part in that transformation. With the new strategy in place, things began to shift dramatically. The pressure that had once felt suffocating now turned into a driving force. We were not only gaining momentum, but we were starting to stand out in ways I hadn't anticipated. The team was more motivated than ever, and I was finally starting to see the results of all the hard work and late nights. My confidence was back, but so was the responsibility. This was no longer just about me. This was about everyone who had worked hard alongside me to turn things around. One afternoon, Rick called me into his office again, and I immediately felt a twinge of nervousness. Was there another problem? Had our progress stalled? The thought of letting everyone down after everything we had worked for made my heart race. I walked into his office and sat down. "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but already feeling the weight of the unknown. Rick looked at me for a long moment, and I could tell he was choosing his words carefully. "You've done something extraordinary. You've turned the team around, the company's seen results, and honestly, the way you've handled the pressure, I don't think anyone could have done it better." My heart skipped a beat. Was this really happening? "Thanks, Rick, but we're not there yet. We've still got a lot of work to do." He nodded. "I know, but I wanted to tell you something. I've been thinking about your future here, and I believe you're ready for more. I want to promote you, not just in title, but in influence. You'll have a larger role in shaping company strategy, and I want you to be part of the leadership team." The room seemed to go quiet for a moment as I processed what he was saying. A promotion, a bigger role. It was everything I had worked for, but the weight of it hit me instantly. I hadn't been expecting this. I had been so focused on proving myself that I hadn't even considered where this path would take me. "I'm honored," I said, my voice steady but filled with disbelief. "But I'm not sure I'm ready for all of that just yet. There's so much more I want to learn." Rick smiled. "That's the kind of attitude that makes you ready. You're never going to feel fully ready, but I trust you, and I believe you're the right person for the job. So think it over. I want you to make the call when you're ready." I left his office that day feeling a sense of pride I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about a job or a promotion. It was about everything I had overcome to get here. The self-doubt, the stress, the fear. I had faced it all and emerged stronger. I had turned the tables and reshaped my future. But as I walked back to my desk, I realized that the decision wasn't just about my career. It was about finding balance. It was about not losing sight of myself while chasing success. I had come so far, but I needed to ask myself, was I still the person I wanted to be? The days following Rick's promotion offer were filled with introspection. It was surreal to be in such a position after everything I'd been through. The job was no longer just about surviving. It was about leading, making a real impact, and most importantly, staying true to the person I had become during this journey. I spent a lot of time reflecting on how far I'd come, not just in my career, but personally. I had been on a path of self-discovery. The stress, the frustration, the doubts, it all felt worth it now that I could see the results. But with this new role, I knew there would be new challenges ahead. The job wasn't just about managing a team or delivering results. It was about managing myself, my expectations, and my own well-being while navigating a more demanding role. The decision about the promotion weighed on me for a while. I kept thinking about what I really wanted. Did I want to climb higher on the corporate ladder? Or did I want to take a step back and preserve the balance I had started to find between work and life? The truth was, I wasn't sure. But what I knew for certain was that I didn't want to lose myself in the process. I decided to talk to Emily again. She had been my constant throughout this entire journey, and I trusted her opinion more than anyone else's. I met her for coffee one Saturday afternoon, and after catching up on the usual stuff, I finally brought up the decision. So, Rick offered me a promotion, I said, taking a deep breath. And I'm not sure what to do. I've worked hard for this, but I'm scared of losing myself in the process. I've been doing so much better, but I don't want this new role to overwhelm me. Emily listened quietly, taking a sip of her coffee. You've worked your butt off to get to where you are. Don't let anyone, including yourself, make you doubt that. But it's okay to be scared. It's okay to question whether it's the right time. Just don't let that fear stop you from moving forward. Her words gave me the clarity I needed. I realized that my hesitation wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a sign of growth. It meant I was learning to prioritize what mattered most, not just to the company, but to myself. I wanted to succeed, but I wanted to do it in a way that allowed me to maintain my balance and my peace of mind. The decision was no longer about whether or not I was ready, it was about how I was going to approach this new chapter. I wasn't going to dive into it head first and lose myself in the process. I would take it step by step, ensure I was setting healthy boundaries, and take the time to celebrate the wins, big and small. I called Rick the next day and told him I was ready to accept the promotion. I appreciated his belief in me, but I also made it clear that I needed the flexibility to grow into the role at my own pace. He was understanding and supportive, which only made me feel more confident in my decision. Looking back, I realized that the true lesson of this journey wasn't about the promotion or the success. It was about finding the courage to step up when I was scared, to accept opportunities even when they felt overwhelming, and to trust myself through the ups and downs. So, to anyone out there who feels stuck or unsure about the next step in their career, I want to say this. Sometimes, the most important thing isn't knowing exactly what to do next, but being brave enough to make a decision, even if it's scary. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just need to take the leap. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between comfort and opportunity? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. And if you found this journey relatable or inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's more to come.